President Trump has said
the end to diversity, equity, and inclusion.
DEI.
We've ended the tyranny of so-called diversity, equity, and inclusion policies.
Yup. I mean, that pretty much explains the state of the world today. And here in the United States, the administration and the president are literally banning hundreds of words. And here's just a few. Elderly, women, black. As the fastest growing conference in the US with black in our name, we had to do something. So we rebranded, removing the word black from our name and replacing it with blank. And it didn't end there. We rebranded our entire platform. The site, LinkedIn, Instagram, every place the brand lived, we stripped it down and shared it with the world. And people talked about it. I mean, everyone talked about it. And the response? The chats was chatting, yo. I mean, people chimed in online, but then calls and text messages though?
Yo, Walt, man, what's up, man? It's Dahani. What is Blank Week? It's supposed to be Black Week, all right? Y'all better than me. This ain't Blank Week, this is Black Week. Put me back. I know it ain't real.
And on April Fool's Day, press broke. And the joke was on all of us because it allowed the entire industry to have a real conversation.
People are trying to erase people of color, minorities, members of the LGBTQ community. They're trying to erase it, and by wanting to change the name to Blank Week and then people getting outraged by it, some people kind of falling for it, I think shows the importance of what they did and just how smart it was.
I can't think of a better time to support an initiative like Black Week.
The social media stunt made waves that saw a 450% increase in website page views and 600% increase in social conversation. Job done. We got people to talk because removing words will never remove our identities and our contributions to the culture. And that is how we turn an irrelevant brand moment into the most important rebrand.
That was great. All right, that was a great introduction. I don't even have to get into the whole background and everything.
We're leaving.
Yeah, right, yeah. Okay, great. So we obviously have the Black Week co-founders here. Can you start by talking about, your decision to change the name, to Blank Week in that campaign? What were you seeing in terms of DE&I rollbacks in the country? What message were you trying to send?
Well, what we started noticing was there was a lot of rollback in D&I. They're telling us to soften language. They're telling us to rename things because leadership is getting uncomfortable. So we decided to all right, so what if we really play it safe? What if we say fuck all these words and call it Blank Week? And they know it's extreme, but again, we did it because we had to say something. Our organization is called Black Week, and they're saying that's a word we can't say. And Black Week was never, it was never designed to be about color. Black Week is designed, to shine a light on those dark places that we all sit as sort of people of color. Regardless of who we are, regardless of, sort of like the way we walk. The reality is that there are marginalized communities that don't have a voice. And the reason we did this was because we wanted to give ourselves the loudest voice. So when we went to Blank Week, we figured we can soften that. And the reaction, we didn't expect the reaction, to be honest with you. Did not expect sort of, people in our DMs just flipping out, talking about, what are y'all doing? You can't, you're supposed to be our light. So it was just an observation of the times. For me, I think that when erasure started hitting me deeply was, when we started talking about the Gulf of America. Just like, you can't erase the culture. You can't erase what Central America has done for that area. And just changing it to Gulf of America doesn't erase who we are as a people.
Yeah. I mean, I think, the big thing we wanted to do was start a conversation, right? Because we saw all these things happening and we see this kind of zero-sum game being pushed as kind of an agenda, right? It's either us versus them and you're kicking us out. There was like an insane, I'm not even gonna give any light to it, but there's like an insane, a whole movement of websites that are using the rhetoric of, equity to say, hey, we're oppressing, white people, and all of this, which at the end of the day is not the point of any of it, right? But I think what we tried to do with the with the stunt was to bring that conversation into the office, right? Because you know, if your problems are not able to be voiced within the space, within a certain space, then your solutions aren't there either, right? And so if it's every time we want to talk about a DEI rollback, we want to talk about some crazy racist shit that happened or whatever, we got to go, you know, meet for lunch, or let's go take a walk, let's go spin the block, then we're not going to have a solution there. So if the companies we work at, not only the platforms they represent, whether those platforms are OUTFRONT or those platforms are brands like, you know, Adidas or whatever, those represent an opportunity to have a conversation. But if we're not having the conversation on the actual problems that are facing us, then we're not going to have those solutions, right? And so that's what we wanted to do, was just spark a little conversation. Apparently it struck a chord.
Yeah, it was. You struck
honey
a
was
big
tight.
conversation. Yeah. Well, yeah, you obviously sparked a massive conversation. I mean, can you talk a little bit about the response? I mean, what was, you know, how did you feel about the response? Was it what you were expecting? Adan, you kind of said you were.
We were honestly, we were expecting to have conversation, and we you know, the thing you think about it, there's 7 founders, and we all have reach in this industry. People were not, you know, people weren't directly talking to us and coming in a negative way. You know, I think that the most surprising comment I got was, I can see why you did it. I can see why you had to change the name. I could, you know, we have to figure out how to move differently these days. And I think that was the most that was the most disappointing feedback that we got, and we got that from a lot of people, where we wanted to speak out, and we're like, no, we're not changing shit. Like, this is who we are. We are meant to be a light. We're meant to be leaders in this industry, and by us, you know, bending a knee wasn't ever going to be in the cards. So I think that the most surprising feedback was people that understood why we did it.
Yeah, I think there was I mean, as with all things that strike a chord, right? You know, if you ain't got no haters, you ain't popping. It was a wide range of feedback, right? There was definitely the like, oh, I see what you did, like, you know, I understand, which is kind of like, okay, cool, I'm gonna take note of that. I don't know what you're understanding about this. Then there was the, you know, man, I can't believe you did this. There was also, you know, there was a lot of people talking, you know, kind of on a, oh, this is making light of something super serious, you know, as well. And so, you know, it ran the gambit, you know what I mean, in terms of the feedback. And I think that was one of those that, you know, thank God for the group chats. We had to just be like, yo, did you see this one? And it's like, I guess we're doing it right because people are talking, but I'm not sure I agree. And that's, I don't know, I think that's the point of having a forum like Blackweek. Is like, it's not for us to dictate a narrative on what people's perspectives are. It's to create a platform for people to share their perspectives. And if anyone's feeling it and anyone wants to chime in, like, go ahead and have the conversation. I think at the end of the day, shit, you could call me purple if you want. I still look black. So whatever you call it doesn't really matter because it is what it is. You know what I mean?
And I think that even when people say that we were making light of something very serious that touches a lot of people, the only reason it felt that way was because it was done on April Fool's Day. But honestly, we wouldn't be able to have this conversation any other time of the year because it, you know, to Dre's point, these conversations happen quietly, and it's not where they need to happen. They need to be loud. So we chose that day because we knew there was going to be the biggest splash we could have, versus just being pissed off and post shit on social every now and then.
Right. Yeah. What impact does the erasure of identity and censorship have on cultural preservation?
Shit. I mean, the reality is, I mean, you know, where I'm going is like, our culture, our stories, those are time capsules. And if we start being quiet, if we start sort of taking a back seat, then history is going to be misrepresented. We're not going to be showing up. We're not going to be seen. And although you're feeling it in the moment, the reality is that if we keep being quiet, if we keep allowing erasure to happen, we're going to actually erase who we are as people. So it's not in the moment, and it's not something that we, you know, that we're going to sit back and see it's going to change. We only got to give it some time, things will get better. it's not. This is the time that we have to be louder, and we have to push against it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say everything and nothing. You know what I mean? And I think that, look, we've been through worse. You know what I'm saying? So if you zoom out from this moment, which as much pain as it might be, it's just like, I've been workplace mob, let go from jobs, you know what I'm saying? I have homies that are losing jobs and stuff like that. And those moments feel like forever, and they feel like the world is crumbling, right? But also when you look back at it, once you get the next job, I'm like, damn, that was like 3 weeks. And I was, that was my only time to rest for the last 5 years, right? And so those are the things, right, that we have to balance, right? Because at the end of the day, we will keep going, and we're going to continue to be who we are. We're going to continue to be disproportionately driving culture, disproportionately moving business. Our shit does numbers. That's just the facts of it, whether you write the history that way or not. So in that sense, nothing. In the other sense, if people are losing their jobs and, culture is trying to be rewritten, it's everything, right? Because if you have kids growing up and they're not able to understand what's going on, or hear the stories correctly, then that could take a lot away, right? So it's kind of one of those that the spectrum is wide, but at the end of the day, I look at it like the stock market, right? Like you shouldn't make moves in the stock market if it doesn't have 100 years of data, So even if it goes down a little bit, like net, it's going to trend positively. There's going to be more equity in the future. I'm highly romantic about the future. Mm-hmm. It's got to be better than fucking today. Shit.
Yeah.
So.
It's a good outlook to have.
Keep those legs moving.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, layoffs. That's everyone's dealing with those right now. It's big in the industry. A lot of agencies are undergoing layoffs. How has that impacted the marginalized communities working in this industry? What is the toll it's taking on our creatives of color? Just this entire environment that we're in.
Yeah. I mean, I think I think it's also coming back to your perspective on what the reception was, right? I think a lot of the spectrum of things comes from a place of fear, right? People are fearful, and the market is changing, right? I think a lot of this conversation on erasure, to be honest, is a bit of a red herring in reality, because the job market is changing at an exponential rate. And the jobs that we had this year and the jobs that we had 2 years ago are not the jobs we'll have in 2 years. And so that's more important, and I think that's probably the most disgusting part of it, is that by getting any of us or all of us or some of us caught up in the am I called this or that conversation, we're not focused on what does my job look like in 2 years and how do I set myself up to do that. And then we're only affording the luxury to think forward in that way to historically dominant people, right? Because they're like, I'm just chilling, so now I'm going to focus on that. And every minute that they spend focusing on, what is the AI of it all for my value that I have in 2 years, and we're spending that same minute being like, what the fuck, I'm black, that's the distraction,
I mean, at the end of the day, people are just tired. They're just tired. Everything seems like extra work these days. The way you show up, I remember when everybody used to be, saying, show up as your full self. Well, our full self makes people uncomfortable. And when those people are uncomfortable, they make decisions that impact their comfort level, and they're not thinking about the business impact or the people impact. So people are tired, and it's getting to the point that even if you're not getting laid off, you're already thinking about how the fuck do I get out of here? Because you're changing the culture of the place you work by keeping that culture quiet, by pushing that culture down. Because if I can't show up as who I am, I'm going to do work to satisfy this client, to satisfy this individual. I'm not doing work for that audience. I'm not doing work that feeds me. I'm doing work that feeds a CMO. I'm doing work that the gatekeeper could feel good about. A lot of gatekeepers have a problem sort of separating who they are from their audience. They don't understand what the work I do is not for you, it's for your audience. Yeah. So I think people are just tired of having to always fight for what's right.
Right, yeah, I mean, maybe we can get into a little bit more about what those conversations are like. In my reporting, I've heard different things about like the level of commitment brands still have for inclusive marketing. Some brands are pulling back, some are pushing forward, but I love to hear more about, in your jobs, like what are you hearing from marketers right now?
I think marketers are being marketed.
Yeah,
So,
you got
quote Jay-Z, right? Believe none of what you hear, half of what you see. So I mean, I think it's a downtrend, on the conversation, but that doesn't mean that the conversation is gone. A smoldering fire is still a fire. It's just waiting for its time. And I think it just changes the landscape of what we want. I think the big thing though is, I think it's a time to take notes. Like I'm like, yeah, get it out. You're mad. No, yes, we're oppressing you. Come on, no, tell me everything. I want to hear all the people that's talking like that. So that when the shit shifts the other way, well, hold on. You can't come back now. You was all high and mighty 2 weeks ago. Relax. You don't fuck with us. You don't fuck with me. You don't believe in what the facts are, right? Because when you look at the facts, and that's the core of Black Week is about the facts, right? It's about the fact that Black, brown, historically underrepresented, all of those things move culture, which moves business, right? There is no Elvis Presley without Black culture. There is no Swedish House Mafia without house music, without rent parties. People don't think that's European. Abadai, no. That shit came from Chicago, came from Baltimore, came from DC, right? With motherfuckers trying to pay their rent. Look at the creativity that's on display, right? And so it's important to just keep your eyes on that part of it. And we just got to figure out a different way to say it and to keep moving forward. Because like I said, we think about, I was watching a thing on my feed yesterday that was like, we used to go to war, and now I'm going to Coca-Doke and I just left Bathhouse. You know what I'm saying? It's a bunch of Black people just frolicking and shit. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's not that bad, right? Okay, we got to call it emerging talent, right? Hey, emerging talent out there. Y'all know who I'm talking to? All right, bet.
Yeah.
Let's keep it moving.
And honestly, the industry has always been the industry. There have been brave marketers, and there have been scared marketers, and there have been safe marketers. The only thing is that today, brave, safe, and scared are taking different definitions. The motivation behind each one of those is different now. Brave used to be like, do some shit that's going to surprise everybody and fucking make some news. That used to be brave. Now brave is like, say Latinx, say Black. Let's keep, let's put a Latino art director on this project. Like, that's now brave, and that's fucking sad.
Yeah.
Brave used to be about the work. Now brave is how you move within these agencies.
Yeah. Well, to that point, can you give an example of something that you actually see as brave, as being inclusive, like a really good example campaign you've seen recently?
Of work?
Yeah.
I would say Beats by Dre, when they did that You Love Me back in 2020, when it was about, you love my culture, you love my skin, you love my style, but do you love me? And they put the question out there to the public. That's very brave, because at the time, nobody was saying anything like that. In 2020, no one was talking about our culture, and unfortunately in 2020, the world turned upside down, and they were not afraid to talk about, you can't keep using our culture and not acknowledging us, the authors of this culture. So I think for me, that's probably one of the bravest moments I've seen in a long time. And again, they weren't selling Beats by Dre. They were selling a community. They were selling a feeling. They were selling anger in a way that we can all accept it and like put a mirror on everybody's face.
Yeah. Who gets to decide which stories are valid, and how does media shape public perception of marginalized voices?
That goes back to the gatekeepers, the algorithms, the individuals that can't see themselves in the work, but decide that they're the ones that are going to decide who gets to see that work.
Yeah, I think the answer is still the same to me, right? It's like, they're the people that control like what's being told out loud, but like, you know, at the end of the day, I mean, we invented, you know, Negro spirituals and the signifying monkey and, you know, rap music. Like, you know what I mean? We have so many ways of telling you what's going on without telling you what's going on. You know what I mean? That's been the culture of it. So it's like if you couldn't kill the culture with the transatlantic slave trade, you couldn't kill the culture with, I don't know, whatever fuck shit's going on right now. You know what I mean? So for me, it's like, is it the things that are gonna get the headlines? Like, look, we still just, I mean, shouts out to Sinners for a second, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I mean? So as much as you're trying to say it's not happening, it's not doing numbers, it's still doing numbers. So it's just a lot of noise, you know what I mean? And I think, you know, for better, for worse, that's what we decided, right? We decided as a society between who opted in, who opted out, who voted, who didn't, that we wanted to put a person that, you know, is excited about causing a lot of hoopla and having a lot of attention over potentially, you know, someone who might want to be more substantive. So, you know, you got a loud person who's running into a quiet room and yelling and screaming and waving their arms, and that's what we're on. But the work still happens. Yeah. You know.
Yeah. How can storytelling be used as a tool to combat identity erasure and create lasting records for future generations?
I think we have to allow the stories to be told. I think, like, honestly, it's just being brave enough to be loud enough and being able to speak to those stories. You know, we talk about Sinners, and it's funny because it's a completely made up story. But when we think about timestamps and we think about when it happened, there was a lot of accuracy in how that story came to life. It's a fantasy story, but a lot of it played out in real time. When you think about, you know, historically accurate, it was incredible. You know, and I saw that there was a lot of Latinos that were really upset about there not being much of a Latino presence there. But the reality is, we weren't there at that time. Like, we just weren't there. So force us in there, and that all goes to, you know, Ryan Coogler's ability to tell stories. I think that if we stay authentic to our stories, and if we don't try to sort of bend and you know, tell a story for the advantage of individuals that are making that noise, then we are going to, those stories are going to live on forever. People want to see themselves in the stories, but they also want these stories to be accurate and brave. And you can't, you know, you're not going to be able to quiet us. It's inevitable. Where we are today and who we are as people of color, you know, whether you be black, brown, Asian, whatever, it doesn't matter. Your presence and your momentum it's inevitable. That we are here and we're not going away, regardless of what you want to call us. You could call a taco you know, half a sandwich. Don't mean shit. Still gonna taste fucking good.
Yeah, no, that's a fact. I think the other thing too, right, is like, in this world of AI and replicas, like, I think what it will do is it'll weed out the inauthenticity, right? Because, you know, there's a pragmatism to a lot of the messages that need to come out in the world, and a lot of the messages that we make. If some shit is fucking $3.99 and it used to be $10.99, like, that's a practical message, you know what I'm saying? Like, my car door works like this, cool, you know? And a lot of that stuff will be automated, right? And in the midst of this kind of sea of automation, you're gonna wanna seek out what's authentic. And I think that was the thing, right? It's funny, you know, I'm not squarely in the Latino community, even though every time I get in the Uber, people think I'm Dominican, but, which I love it.
I thought he was Dominican when I met him.
But I was gonna say, Sinners is a tremendous example of representation and authenticity, right? Having a conversation about how there is generations of Asian communities, you know, in the South, right, and in South America, to your point, right? And how you're gonna run a store, and you got a white store and a black store, right? And if you notice, there's a Jewish store in that strip in the show as well, right, in the movie. And so there are ways to be authentic and be representational without it making the center of the story. And I think that was the beauty of Sinners. It's like, it doesn't have to be a black movie. That was just a movie that was set in a time period where there were black people. Right. Yeah. You know, and because of that, I think it has a lot more resonance. You know what I mean? So, the storytelling has every opportunity. It just matters on where you do it, and not everything has to be like, look at me, I'm black. You know what I'm saying? I think the Selmas and the 12 Years a Slave, I mean, those are cool, But I'm curious to see the chains off and letting us tell more stories that are just good ass stories.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. How can companies move beyond performative DE&I efforts to actively protect the integrity of marginalized identities?
Oh, they just have to put that, they have to take, those communities that they're serving, they have to put leadership from those communities in place. When you think about performative DEI, you say, performative DEI says, I support you. Action DEI, the DEI that actually has input and changes lives, says, I trust you to lead. So, I don't really need your support. I need you to trust me to lead. And if you trust me to lead, then I can lead us in the right direction. But if you're just going to support me, tap me on my shoulder, and say you're doing a great job, and for what? For throwing a salsa party? Like, no, like it's.
I think it's called mariachi.
Mariachi, yeah, same. But the problem is that if we're going to be performative, as long as we keep our people and we keep the people who are impacted by DEI, who have the most to gain from it, and we keep them at bay just because we just want to show up that we understand them. Hispanic Heritage Month, we got you. Black History Month, we got you. That's all performative bullshit. Mm-hmm. If you're not putting us in a position of leadership, and if you're not putting us in a position to really change lives, then at the end of the day, you're going to only be performative.
Yeah, I mean, I think hire good people, get the fuck out of the way. I think that's what it is at the end of the day.
That's what I just said, but not as vulgar.
Yeah.
That's all right.
I think it's all the same thing, and every one of us is in this room, and every one of us got an opportunity. Because I think as much as people could try to vilify things like affirmative action and things of that nature, that was never about putting people who didn't know what they were doing in a position to do stuff. That was about turning up the volume on people whose volume was being muffled, right? So keep hiring good people and keep allowing them to be empowered to do the work, and keep being okay with being uncomfortable. I think at the end of the day, that's the biggest fallacy of this whole time. Like, the way that equity works and leadership works is you rally around the person who's the most uncomfortable in the room, right? Not around the people who are the most comfortable. But the presumption that we should be comfortable. I don't think anyone who's not a white, cis, heterosexual male wakes up in the morning and presumes they're going to be comfortable today, right? They might go to a spa, I'm comfortable for a little bit. But if someone was like, hey, fuck you, I'd be like, okay, it's Tuesday, I'm on the train in New York. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's the beauty of New York, and I think that's the reality of this. It's like, we gotta get past the fact that uncomfortable is bad and get to the place where, if you're in the gym and you do three sets of 5 reps, it's not until you get to failure that you start growing, right? So when you get uncomfortable, you should be excited, right? And how do we lean into being uncomfortable and lean into empowering leaders that make us uncomfortable, not for silly reasons, but because they know what they're doing, because they're willing to speak their truth. So companies have all the power, right? Companies have the power to change the world. Depends if they want to take that responsibility or if they want to, be in a lukewarm bath. Yeah.
I think we should probably open it up for audience questions now. Or no, we have time for one more. Okay. What steps can we take to prevent cultural erasure and ensure that diverse narratives continue to shape society? Like, what steps can, everyone kind of take away from this?
Yeah. Oh, you wanna go?
Nah, I mean, right off the bat, just celebrate each other. All we have to do is celebrate each other, show up for each other, and support each other. You gotta. I mean, the way I see it is, you gotta treat it like real estate. You're not gonna prosper on someone else's land. So fuck with your people, fuck with your neighbors, and build with that. We built Blackweek because we didn't see anything like that for us. Mm-hmm. So we said, fuck it, if we're not gonna get invited, we'll create something that people are gonna wanna get invited to. But then we understand that, yes, that's one extreme. But you can also support platforms that support you. support individuals that support you. And we all know, whether it's a streamer or whether it's a media company, if they support you, it's going to be very apparent. So I think that we have to just keep supporting each other and keep giving us the permission to be loud with our stories, because they can't, again, they can call it whatever they want to call it. They can't erase it. It's like we as a people are inevitable.
100%.
Okay, great. Anyone in the audience have questions for Andre or Adan? You can come up to the microphone right up here if you have any questions.
Or Lindsay.
Yeah. Oh, yes, yeah. If you got a question for me, sure, go for it.
Extra credit if you beatbox.
Yeah, any questions at all. Don't be shy. Do we have any takers?
Anybody got no questions?
No questions?
We answered everything.
I could ask another if we have time. All right. Okay, sure. All right. Oh. Yeah.
We got the mic.
First of all, great panel to my brothers, man. Nothing but love. And then before I ask the question, I want to say everything they're saying is real. And we love what you created at Blackweek and what the opportunities you created. I know for me personally, bro. So thank y'all for what y'all do, man.
Absolutely.
And now I want to know about the Blackweek, the Blank Week. Who came up with the idea, the execution, getting that together? Like, because when I saw it, I hit up Walt. I think I hit up you, Dre. Like, what's going on? So how did you guys come up and execute that?
I mean, I think it was one of those,
It's those group chat moments.
Group chat, man. We're in a group chat. Yo, what's good? What did we do this? Okay,
We were like,
we do a lot of group chatting.
We do a lot of fucking group. We do a lot of group chat.
texting.
We had the logo designed in the group chat. Like I'm like,
Right.
Fire.
We did everything in the group chat, and it was just initial idea, then it explodes, and then we even start putting some meaning behind the idea that initially we had.
Yeah.
It was when we talked about Blank Week. One of the funny things Joe said. Joe Anthony, he's one of the founders as well, and he was like, "Blank Week, come as you are. You fill in the blank." And I'm like, "That's pretty fucking funny," but we're not. It got
too good.
At one point, I was like, "Damn, should we do this?" Because it sounded like a good business proposition at the time. But no, we had it was all in the group chat, man, and it's just like we do a lot of our best work in there.
Yeah. Organic.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Anyone else? No? All right. Well, thank you both so much. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Round of applause.
Absolutely.